Hello. All right. Sound check, testing. Oopsies. All right. We'll start maybe in 3 minutes, give some people time to get in. This is a very jam-packed session today, so do want to make sure we get through everything and don't take up too much extra time. But yeah, this is going to be it's going to be good. As I've said many times in the past, JavaScript is definitely the main chunk of the course. Like a lot of the stuff we did with HTML, CSS, you know, it's very important for web development. But honestly, JavaScript is the most important skill, I think, for getting into web dev these days. So that's why we are dedicating about like 1.5 weeks just on the basics of JavaScript. But let's see. Hey everyone, welcome. But yeah, should be good. If you're new to, well, actually 1 second. Oh, how come I'm not connecting? Oh, thank you.
Your title is wrong.
My title. Oh yeah, I need to change my Twitch title. 1 second. Oopsies. Give me 1 second. It still says office hours. Edit office hours. Java web dev bootcamp session. What is this? Session 7. JavaScript. Oh crap! No. Can you take Bobby away, please? Bootcamp session 7. JavaScript. Oh my god. All right. There we go. I edited the title. All right. Welcome. Let me see. I just realized my Twitch bio is kind of messed up. I will fix that eventually. I know a lot of things I need to catch up on. Like I need to finish uploading YouTube videos. I need to update my about, so forth. And my computer is dying very quickly. Oh, I did upgrade the stream quality, so maybe that has something to do with it. Okay, cool. All right, I will go ahead and start it off. Yeah, maybe like 1 more minute, let people come in. I'm also gonna close a bunch of my stuff because my computer is dying. All right, let me just close that. Cool. No, that's good to hear. Yeah, I don't know why it took me so long to figure out how to move off of 720p video. So hopefully it's clear now. All right, let's go ahead and I'm gonna share my slides. Oh, I did update the slides command. If you do run !slides, you should be able to see that. If you're in our Discord, you can also click the link at the slides there. I did include the link to the PDF in the Discord as well. So if you do prefer that, you can use that to follow along. But today, since there's just so much to go through, a lot of like half of the stuff is in the slides, half of it is not. So I would definitely like consult the recording if you do want to catch up. But we have like, you know, good amount of homework. Not a ton of homework, but like the homework will cover a lot of what we covered today, just in a little bit more in depth. All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. Okay, so just to start off, we have some announcements here. First off, just wanted to kind of show the holiday schedule. I know not everyone here is American, but I'm going to be taking just some time off during the holidays, so just wanted to make sure everyone is on the same page here. So this is, today's the 15th, so we're here at the first session of JavaScript. We're probably going to go 2 more sessions of JavaScript, and we're going to feel it out too, just based on feedback. We might do more, we might do less, but I feel like 3 covering just JavaScript should be fairly good and give us a good base. And then we're going to take the 24th off, which for Americans, we celebrate Thanksgiving. After that, we're going to be diving into APIs and using connecting JavaScript to APIs, which will be fun. So it'll be on the 29th. And then we're going to take a break on the 1st. So basically, we're going to skip 2 Thursdays in November. Or, yeah, 2 Thursdays in a row. And then in December, here's what our December schedule looks like. The first week of December, well, I guess particularly the second week of December, we're going to be diving into Svelte. Svelte, if you don't know, Svelte is a really powerful JavaScript framework. I think it's a great way to bridge the gap between HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which is where we are now, into React, which is React kind of like the final boss of front end, right? React is kind of like what we're building up towards. And I just find Svelte a really good way to bridge that. So we're going to do Svelte for a week. Then we're going to do React for a week, maybe a little bit more than a week, still filling this out. But then we're going to go straight into the back end. So as you can see, it's starting to pick up, right? Like we're kind of spending a lot of time on the fundamentals, getting our basics down. But as you can see in December, it's going to start picking up. And then, we'll maybe take a break for the new year. And I think the main curriculum will end sometime in early January, where we kind of finish up back end. So this has been requested by many, and I've kind of thought about how best to form this, but I think we've decided to launch our second course sometime in January, and this course will be dedicated to generative AI. So this course is designed for people who are beginner devs or just any devs of any level. So basically everyone here is a dev, and you're learning to become a dev. So this second course is designed for you in mind. And to me, this is the fastest way to break into the AI and ML world. For those that don't know, maybe they're not on Twitter, generative AI has taken the world by storm. We're seeing generative AI text, video, image, and I got lucky to happen to work at one of these companies that use generative AI. So it's very new, but I learned a lot working there, and I built a good amount of projects with generative AI. And I think I want to do this course as a way to kind of help other developers break into that world, because you really don't need to know like all the statistics, math of AI, ML. Like it'll help, but really I find that generative AI is kind of like a different skill set altogether. So yeah, the goal is just, it's a really great way to make your profile stand out as a developer if you add these projects to your resume. So some of the projects we'll be building are like building an AI writing app, building an art generator, building AI summarization tools, maybe like a Chrome extension, building chatbots. There's going to be a lot, right? There's almost too many projects that we could build here. And everyone's going to be building different projects. We're also going to be diving into some advanced prompt engineering techniques that you probably wouldn't see elsewhere. So top secret stuff. And yeah, another bonus of doing this course is that, being in the generative AI world, having connections with friends that run generative AI companies, I wanted to start doing like a matching program and basically match people with AI companies and internships, because I know as someone who worked at one of these generative AI companies, it's really hard to hire people that have the skill, because there's, it's so new, like almost nobody has this skill. So one of the main goals of this bootcamp is to train like developers up to be able to kind of have that experience. And maybe it'll be a good way to break into these companies. Especially we see, honestly, the tech industry has been really tough right now for entry level. And, they say one of the best ways to make yourself stand out is by having skills that nobody else has. And I genuinely think that generative AI is one of the best spaces for that right now. So there is going to be a price that is attached to it. I'm definitely want to do like a discount for anybody who's like in this initial course, but I still need to kind of flesh it out. And then I have this like link to a type form here if you are interested in. This is not necessarily a sign up form. This is just for updates. I don't like, I'm going to be kind of advertising this outside of the bootcamp as well. So that's why I have this type form. So of course, if you're into Discord, you are going to see updates here. But if you do want to kind of see, get official updates and like get notified as things get rolled out, like the landing page and the syllabus and all that, you can sign up with this link, this type form I just posted in the chat. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. There's a lot of there's a whole new world out there with generative AI, and really the only skill that's required to getting into this course is web dev. Even then, I'm also thinking about spinning one off for like non-developers, people who want to use like no-code tools, but for now, just focusing on developers. Someone asked, how long will the course go for? That's a great question. I am thinking that this will be about like 6 weeks. But once again, still playing around with things. I'll keep you guys updated as I have the syllabus finalized. But right now I'm targeting it is going to be a shorter duration than what we're doing now with the Web Dev Bootcamp. So yay, that's going to be fun. But yeah, I think I'm really excited for this. As I know, there's no course out there that teaches generative AI, just because like I said, it's so new. So we might be the first here, which is kind of fun. But yeah, glad to hear people are excited. That's super cool. But yeah, all right, cool. So just a really quick recap. Not much to talk about here. We basically just finished up our Tailwind module last time. For those that are joining us later, or maybe didn't get a chance to watch the recording, essentially we just built like a mini landing page from scratch. It was just we just kind of made a fake site for like just a joke startup, like a Ponzi scheme as a service startup, which is kind of funny. We played around a little bit with like Tailwind responsive design, hover states, animations, and a little bit of Flexbox. But once again, this Tailwind is one of those things. Tailwind, CSS, and HTML are those things that, I purposely like went through fast. We didn't go super deep into these subjects because as we get deeper into JavaScript, as we get deeper into building the apps. Oh yeah, the code, sorry. Oh my God. I just realized I never shared my screen. Thanks for calling that out. Oops. All right, I just realized, I guess I'll go back really quick to the holiday schedule since I realized that no one could see anything. Oops, I got too excited. But yeah, this is the holiday schedule if you do want to see that visually. This is the info about the generative AI course. Yeah, apologies there. Thanks for calling that out. The code, oh yeah, and someone asked about the sign up code. If you already submitted it, that's totally cool. But if you do want like a special code, you could just use like Twitch Bootcamp, like this, Twitch Bootcamp, just to say that you're in the boot camp. But I know a lot of your faces and stuff, or not faces, but I know a lot of like your some of your names from like doing the boot camp. So even if you didn't put in the code, it's totally cool. I'll just like I'll go back and like add it manually. But yeah, this is the information about the generative AI stuff. And yeah, sorry about not sharing the slides. For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, definitely we have a solid class now, and I feel like I'm starting to get everyone's usernames and names and all that. But yeah, so yeah, we finishing up our Tailwind HTML CSS stuff. Y'all are going to encounter this frequently as we go through JavaScript. And I say this a lot, but really, if I'm trying to impart one skill from this whole bootcamp, is to be good at JavaScript. Because I think if you're good at JavaScript and you understand the basics of HTML, CSS, and Tailwind, you'll pick those things up so fast, like just through building projects. So that's why we're really focusing on JavaScript here. And with that, let's go over the agenda really quick. So the agenda is pretty basic. We're just going to talk about, at a high level, what is JavaScript, how it kind of connects to what we've learned already, so how it works in HTML. We're going to talk about ES6 and what that means. And then we're going to talk about some actual JavaScript terminology, but all of the terminology stuff we'll do together. It'll be like an interactive thing. So don't need to worry about memorizing any of this. And then, as always, we'll go over the homework and do the Q&A as well. Okay, so there's a lot of text on this page. I'm going to run through it really quick because, yeah, this is not the focus of it, but it's always good to get background. So JavaScript, it takes care of the logic on a web page. Is the simplest description I can give to what JavaScript does. Right? It's a programming language, but very different from HTML and CSS. It's very much a classical programming language in that it deals with logic, functions, all that stuff. And if we imagine what the role of JavaScript is, if we think about like Facebook.com, right? As you'll know, HTML, CSS take care of the look and the structure of Facebook.com, right? If you go to Facebook.com right now, you'll see like how it looks, like that's all HTML, CSS. But without JavaScript, you wouldn't be able to do things on Facebook like post status or like log in or add friends, right? All of those like functionality is what we're going to call it. All that functionality wouldn't work without JavaScript. So that's basically what JavaScript does. And without JavaScript, like a site is just a website, right? It's just a basic static website. And JavaScript is oftentimes the main piece you need to make it more of like an app, right? Like more like an application with data and stuff. It was invented by this guy named Brendan Eich in 1995. And so it's kind of old, right? I mean, that's about how old I am. But, it's for a programming language, it's kind of old. And just a quick history, like JavaScript was was kind of like a spam language for most of its life. Like JavaScript, you know, I don't know if you guys know those websites where it's like you just get those pop-ups. You don't see them a lot anymore, but like sometimes you would like there'd be like if you're trying to watch a movie illegally, there'd be like weird pop-ups and like scammy pop-ups and stuff like that. That's what JavaScript was mainly used for back in the day. But then something called Node was invented, and then that's when JavaScript started to take off in popularity. So just really quick history there. And now it's the most popular programming language in the world. Before JavaScript, like PHP was very dominant in web development, and then Ruby was really dominant, and now we're living in the age of JavaScript. So it's a very versatile language to learn. And yeah, I would say it's probably the most versatile programming language up there with Python. And I mean versatile as in you can use the same language for a variety of different uses. And the only language I can think of that has as many uses is probably Python, or like, yeah, that actually just made those two. So some of the things you can build with JavaScript are like web apps. So like Facebook.com, the website is a web app. Mobile apps. You can build desktop apps. You can build games. You can build VR apps. You can build 3D experiences. All of these are possible with just JavaScript, which is really cool. When I was learning JavaScript, I always was like, oh, I want to learn how to build mobile apps. And I always assumed that I had to know Swift, iOS, like Objective-C, Java to do that. But then, you know, React, which is the framework we're going to get into, React provides a way to actually build mobile apps, which is really cool. So, you know, we're not going to get into like how to build mobile apps in JavaScript, but once you learn React, you basically have the skills you need to build your own mobile app, which is cool. So someone asked, what languages were used for websites before JS? Yeah, I mean, I would say PHP was a big one. PHP was like a very popular language, and an example of a company that was built on PHP was Facebook. Like Facebook, like notoriously was probably the biggest company that was built off of like just PHP, and only like several years ago did they migrate everything off of PHP. I think some parts are actually still in PHP, but I mean, I never worked at Facebook, so I don't really know for sure. So PHP was a big one. Ruby was another very popular programming language. There are a lot of companies that like wrote off Ruby still. Python was used for a few years, not as a front-end language, but like as a back-end language. Quora comes to mind as like a pretty big company that used Python. So someone says they have their own version of PHP sticking around their internals. Yeah, I believe that. It's just such a big code base. Like it seems unlikely that they would like rip everything out. So that's interesting to know that they're still using a little bit of PHP there. All right, but yeah, so basically JavaScript is very versatile. It's a good choice. A lot of programmers don't like it, when we'll get into why like later. But you know, we are going to learn something called TypeScript, which is kind of a flavor of JavaScript, which makes JavaScript a little bit more safe. When will this video be uploaded to YouTube? Oh, no worries. So right now, Twitch does save all my VODs, so I've been kind of lazy with the YouTube uploading. I was going to bulk upload a bunch of videos like tomorrow, maybe Thursday. So sometime this week is when I'll catch up on bulk loading up the videos. But if you don't want to wait that long, you should be able to just watch this in Twitch. So I would say right now Twitch is preferred over YouTube actually, because yeah, there's a delay with me uploading YouTube videos. Cool. So let's talk about how JavaScript builds on top of things we know now. So right now, you know, we covered HTML, CSS. JavaScript is loaded, just like how CSS was loaded through that link tag that we saw, the link rel style sheet thing. JavaScript is loaded in HTML through a script tag. So for example, if you have a JavaScript file called index.js, you would just load it like this, like with a script tag and the source being equal to the index.js file. And the dot slash, I don't know if we've talked about the dot slash, probably not. The dot slash is basically saying it's like a file path. So when it's a dot slash, that means the index.js is at the same level as the index.html. And we'll get a little bit more into that, like when we do more complex structures, but that's just a quick note on that. But for at least this week, maybe next week we'll move off of it. For this week, just to have it easier to be an easy way to practice JavaScript, we're going to be starting out by practicing in tools such as CodePen. And CodePen is going to be the one that we're going to all kind of work through today. So just some context there. And CodePen, just for those who aren't familiar, CodePen basically creates a mini version of your HTML, CSS, JavaScript setup. So it basically just has everything there for you in your browser. So it makes it really easy to like quickly work on things. Okay, so let's talk about ES6. And ES6 is something that I was debating about adding this early, as some of you that were at office hours yesterday might know. But in the end, I decided to include a mention of ES6 here. So basically, like many programming language, JavaScript has not stayed stagnant. It has changed over time. And it actually has gone through some revisions, like new features were added to the language, if you can imagine that. And ES6 was the second major revision to JavaScript. And you might also see it called as like ECMAScript 2015, ECMAScript 6. These are all just different words to describe ES6, which is the shorthand. And basically, ES6 introduced more modern additions. And the only reason why I'm highlighting this now is because, you know, our goal here is to learn how to become modern web developers. And that means we should be striving to use ES6 as much as possible. And as we learn JavaScript today, I'll be pointing out which parts are ES6 and which parts aren't. You know, you don't have to memorize necessarily, but I think it's just good to know, like, oh, this feature is something that was introduced later. Because generally, if you have a choice between the ES6 version of something and the non-ES6 version, I would say go with the ES6 version, because that's what is modern, like JavaScript style. Someone asked, this lesson will be available to watch later. Yes, so they're available on Twitch. Oh yes, and that's a good point. I do need to rename the videos. Yes, I can definitely do that after today's lesson. That's a good point. But yes, this will be available on Twitch, like as a VOD, and good call out there on the titles. I do need to update the titles. Where's the sign up for the class in Jan? Yeah, let me go ahead and just repost that. And you can also use the code. There's like a code field at the end. The code is like Twitch Bootcamp if you do want to like let me know that you're part of the bootcamp. But honestly, I'm going to go through today with all the responses and just note that everyone that signed up today was, you know, clearly from the bootcamp, because I haven't sent this out to anybody else. Okay, cool. So that's ES6. It's going to make a lot more sense once we get into the code. So let's dive into that. Okay, so we could have like a bunch of lecture slides talking about each part of JavaScript. But honestly, that would take too long, and I personally don't. Like, if I were learning, I don't think I'd remember anything that way. So let's do this together in a CodePen. So I'm gonna go to this website called codepen.io/pen, and you should see something like this, like a blank setup. I'm gonna go ahead and share the link in the chat. All right. So when everyone's getting ready here, I'll go ahead and just kind of like talk through CodePen here. So CodePen is basically like a stripped down mini version of your developer environment, right? This big white space is your browser. So as you can see, if I type something in HTML, like if I just say, or I just say like hello world. I can't type today. As you can see, it just shows up here, right? This is like the browser preview, if you will. And yeah, as you can see, there's like 3 sections here for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So they all are already connected for you. So there's like a, you know, there is already a link tag for the CSS. There's already a script tag for the JavaScript. They're just hidden, right? So that's why I don't start with CodePen generally, because it hides a bunch of the important stuff. But, you know, for teaching JavaScript, I find this pretty useful. So what I want us to do is I want us to actually close or minimize these. I'm trying to think, is there an easy way to... I think you can, okay, yeah, I think you can unfold or fold all, no, minimize CSS editor. Okay, so if you click the drop down here, like the caret next to the HTML and CSS section, you can click minimize. So we want to minimize the HTML editor, or alternatively, I guess you could click on the JavaScript one to maximize the JavaScript editor, because we're only going to be focusing on JavaScript today. So we don't really care about the other parts. I'm also going to make my screen a little bit bigger, just so we can see here. All right. I'm also going to get rid of this hello world, actually. Don't need that. Okay, cool. So this is what you should kind of see. Your screen might look slightly different from mine. Go away, add. Optionally, you can also click, actually not optionally, you should also open this console. This console is basically like a terminal, and it basically will show the outputs of our JavaScript. Since our outputs won't appear on our HTML like directly, it's better if we have a console to see them. So open this console. It should be down here on the bottom left corner, right under my face cam. And it should open something like this. I'm gonna move my face cam actually. Yep, there we go. So let me. So 21 Blue asked a question about Webflow. Yeah, that's a really good question. Do you mind if I revisit that question at the Q&A? Because I do have I think there's it is a really good question and is worth discussing. But I do want to get through like the bulk of the JavaScript. So if it's cool, I'm happy to like talk about it during the Q&A if that works. Okay, cool. So hopefully we're all good here. So JavaScript, right? We haven't touched any JavaScript yet besides like a couple of files here and there. And really the bulk of JavaScript revolves around, let's see, the bulk of JavaScript revolves around variables and functions, which are kind of the main takeaways of today. But before we do that, let's start with the very basics. Let's talk about comments. So I don't think we've actually talked about comments in HTML or CSS, but comments are something that's universal to all programming languages. And comments are basically parts of code that only humans are supposed to read. So what I mean by that is like, so to do a comment in JavaScript, there's two ways. If you do a single line comment, you can use 2 slashes like this, and then you type something after that. And a comment is basically just like, it's just a note, if you think about it. It's just like a note. And the running this code won't do anything, right? Basically, when the code runs, the computer just ignores everything that's commented, right? Because the comments are for humans. Oh, okay. I see you're heading. You're not able to make it to the end. No worries. Yeah, I'll talk about it today, and maybe. Yeah, I know you won't be here to like live to watch it, but I will like make a note of it in the Q&A. So sorry about that. I know the time zones aren't super friendly for everyone, so I appreciate you still being here. Cool. So yeah, for comments, basically these are just notes of like human readable parts of the code. So for today's purposes, we're just going to be using comments to like separate sections of our notes, but that's just a quick note there. The second thing I want to show here is the console.log statement. So first I'm going to make a comment here, just separating the different sections of our code. And then I'm going to show you what a console.log is. So to write a console.log, you just write console.log and then parentheses. Let me actually slow that down and retype that. So console.log parentheses. And inside the parentheses, we can put like double quotes or single quotes. It doesn't matter. Let's just put hello world. Cool. So actually, I didn't have to do anything because CodePen auto runs our code for us. But if you notice down here, let me make the console bigger. I'm just gonna hide the preview. If that's cool. We're not gonna actually use the preview today. If you look at the console here, you can see that hello world showed up, right? And basically console.log, it doesn't actually do anything in the code. It just prints something. If you're familiar with Python, this is the same as the print function, right? It basically just spits out some text. So throughout today, we'll be using console.log as just a way to like show the value of things and things in JavaScript, and they'll just show up here in the console, right? It's basically just a log statement. So just starting out with comments and console.logs. Let me also do a section for comments. This is a comment. Cool. So that's console.log. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna comment out the code that we don't use, just so it doesn't pollute our console. Because as you can see, there's already like many hello worlds here because it keeps rerunning the code. I'm just gonna go ahead and clear it. So the clear button right here on the top right of the console is how you can just quickly clear the console. Okay, so console logs and comments are are mainly for humans. I guess if we take nothing away from that part. They're just for developers like you and I to understand like what's going on in the code. And console.log is one we'll be, actually both of these, both comments and console.logs, we're going to be using a lot because comments are really good for helping other developers understand our code. And console.logs are really useful for us to figure out why our code is broken. So we'll get more into that later. Okay, so now let's talk about the core piece, or one of the core pieces of JavaScript, which is variables. So if you've done a programming 101 class before or taken comp sci in high school or something, you are probably familiar with what a variable is, but all this content is, I'm going to assume that you've never touched programming before at all. So just bear with me if you have taken programming classes before. Yeah, thanks for helping out there. Yeah, just there should be it's really small, but it's just, mine's down here in the bottom left, like where my cursor is like kind of hovering. Hopefully that works. Yeah, so let's talk about variables. Variables are basically just a way to store data in programming, right? A lot of this stuff that we're talking about is it is specific. Like we're showing it in the context of JavaScript, but these are concepts that are universal to all programming languages, like Python, Rust, all of that. They all have these like variables and functions. And in JavaScript, there are 3 ways we can declare a variable. So let's go through the different ways. We can use var. So if we create a variable called name and then set it equal to like Zach, let's kind of dissect what's going on here. So var specifies that this is a variable, right? It starts out with like declaring that this is a variable. And then we have the actual like name of the variable. In this case, the name is literally called name. So maybe that wasn't a great example there. But this is like, what is the variable called, essentially? And then finally, we have, well, after that, we have the equal sign. So like what we're setting the variable equal to. And then we have our value. So in this case, our value is this text, right? This text that says my name. And what you'll also notice is that like this text has to be in double quotes, or has to be in quotes, sorry. If I put it without quotes, it's not gonna work. Like it's gonna, oh yeah, it gives us error, right? So Zach is not defined. And that's because in programming, or yeah, in JavaScript and in programming, if we try to reference this word without the quotes, JavaScript is basically gonna look for a variable named Zach, and it's gonna be like, it's not defined. So that's why it's angry here, it's throwing an error. So basically, variables are used for saving data. So in this case, we're saving this text that says Zach to the variable name. And this data comes in many different types. So maybe before we move on to the different types, let's do a console log again. So if I console log name, okay, see it shows up as Zach, right? Because what happens under the hood is that name, basically JavaScript looks for a variable that we've declared in our code called name, and it sees that it's equal to Zach. So that's why it prints out Zach here, right? And one other thing to note here is that Zach is a string. I've been using the word text, but the actual programming term is a string. So let me open up another section here called data types. And then first we'll start with string. So strings can be in double quotes or single quotes, right? If I change this code to be double quotes, it still works. It doesn't actually matter if I'm using single quotes or double quotes, as long as they're consistent. You cannot do this. Like you can't have a single quote and a double quote. Like that's just, you see, it's angry at us. It gives us some errors. So that's not gonna work. So I would say, once again, it doesn't matter which one you use, but I would keep it consistent, right? So does single or double just matter on the developer? Yeah, that's kind of one way to think about it. It's like, I say this theme a lot, but it's, if you're working on your own project, use whatever you want as long as it's consistent, right? If you're gonna use double quotes for your whole code base. if you're working on someone else's project or working for a company, keep it consistent to what they're using, right? If they're all using single quotes, you don't want to be that person that uses double quotes, right? You want to keep it consistent. And a lot of times in our editor, we'll have tooling that automatically fixes it for you. So honestly, you don't have to worry that much, but you just have to know that, basically they do the same. It's just a matter about style and consistency. Okay, so we've talked about strings. So Zach here is a string, right? Another data type is a number, right? Number. And so if I define a number variable, so I'll maybe say my age, var age equals, how old am I? I'm 26, I forgot. Okay, so that's my age. So as you can see, I did not put double quotes, right? Because double quotes or single quotes are only for strings. They're only for like text. Sorry, my cat is interrupting and opening my dictionary. Can you take her away? She's being bad. Okay. So here we have a number, right? This is a number data type. And once again, if I were to console log the age, well, let me get rid of this one. It says 26, right? It shows up in our console. So number is another data type. We have many data types, and we're not going to cover them all today, but really I just want us today to only focus on strings, numbers, and maybe Booleans. So Booleans might be a weird one, right? If you're not familiar with that term. Boolean is basically just a true, it means if it's true or false. So an example of a Boolean we save for the variable could be like, here, let me separate this. So maybe we could say like, I don't know, has black hair as a variable equals true, right? This is obviously all of these qualities are describing myself. So as you can see, the word true is not in quotes, right? It's a special reserved word in JavaScript. True is a reserved word and false is the opposite, right? So it's useful for like, if you want to like check, if this person has black hair or like certain qualities about them, Booleans are really useful for that. We're not going to get too much into Booleans today, but I just wanted to kind of point out that true and false are special words. Cool. All right, so we covered three very basic types of data types: strings, numbers, and Boolean. And we will cover more, but for now, let's just focus on these three. Okay, earlier I said that there's three ways to define variables, right? Var, as we've seen here, right? Var is the classic way. It's the OG way. This is not ES6, right? Remember, ES6 is like an update to JavaScript that came out, and with ES6 came two new ways to define variables. So whenever you see a code base that has a lot of vars, it usually means that code is like pre-2016. That doesn't always mean that, but like, it's gotten so that developers post ES6 have started changing the way they've written variables. So whenever you see var, that's usually like a more classic way to write variables. So the two other ways are with let. So you can use let. I don't know, what's another good example? Let cat name equals Tommy. So let and var are very similar. There is actually a key difference, but it's difficult to explain it without opening up the JavaScript bag of worms. But for most purposes, I would say 99% of instances, you can swap out let with var. I don't want to say they do the same thing because they actually technically do not, but they're very, very similar. And there are going to be edge cases where they cause a difference. So let is another way. So this is the ES6 way. I'm going to make a note of this. Let is the ES6 version of var. I can't type. Okay. So just in case you see the word let, like that just means like, okay, this code is like a little bit more modern, right? It's basically using ES6. And then we're going to introduce the third way of defining variable, which is with const. In const, is for variables that you cannot change or you're not supposed to change. Which seems like a weird concept. Like, why would you restrict a variable to not being changed? Well, before we demonstrate this, like, let me go ahead and show you what I mean. So before I show a const, let me go ahead and change my cat name variable to Bobby, which is another cat I have. So as you can see here, I define cat name, the cat name variable, as Tommy, right? And then on line 17 here, I'm overwriting it with Bobby. So now after this, if I console.log cat name, let me go ahead and clear my console. See, it shows up Bobby, right? It doesn't show up Tommy, it shows up Bobby because JavaScript runs from top down, right? JavaScript is basically reading this line 13. It's like, okay, cool, there's a cat name variable and it equals Tommy. And then it reads line 17 and it's like, oh, wait, actually cat name has now become Bobby. So that when line 19 is called, it looks at the last saved definition of cat name, which is Bobby. And so to prove this, like if I put a console log here, if we put a console log on line 16 instead, and then we run it, how do I run this code manually? Oops, no, go away. This runner is weird. It's like not always automatically running. Let me go ahead and maybe like do a change there. Why would you run? It says 85 unsafe changes. JS. That's okay. All good. Well, let me just retype it one more time. Try to get it to run. Run, please. Oops. Okay, for some reason it's not auto running, but y'all get the gist. Basically, it would show up. Oh, you can turn auto run off. Yes, that's probably what I want. Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead in settings, pen details, behavior. Ah, yes, this is what I want. Okay, I'm gonna turn this off. You don't have to, but just for my presentation purposes, it's probably easier if I manually run. Good point there. So yeah, under settings behavior, you can turn this off, which will allow you to manually run the code.
That's the preview though.
Oh wait, this is the preview or the console? Oh no, it works. It works for the console, yeah. Cool. So yeah, if I basically manually run it, you can see that first it logs cat name as Tommy, and then it logs cat name as Bobby, right? Because I've updated it. Okay, so this is just to show that variables can be updated, right? They're not fixed. But that's only for var and let. For const, let's check out what happens if I do a const. So let me go ahead and delete this. Or maybe I'll just move this up here just to demonstrate. So const, if I do const, I don't know, const, like favorite device equals, let's say my favorite device is a MacBook. If I try to overwrite favorite device, so let's say I do favorite device equals iPhone or something, or maybe Android. I don't know. I don't know Android, but favorite device Android. Let's see what happens here. And let me try to console log favorite device. Or I guess Android is not a device, but okay, I'm gonna change it back to iPhone. Okay, so let's say I try to, I create a variable called favorite device, and I try to overwrite it to become iPhone, and I run it. Uh-oh, it gives me an error. It says the error is assignment to constant variable. Basically, it's complaining that it's basically like, hey, you said this was a const, right? Const means like as short for constant. It's not supposed to change, yet on line 23, you attempted to change it. Why is this useful? Well, this is more useful when we get into more advanced applications. Like it's not really clear to see the benefit of const this early, but this is just to show like what happens if you do try to override a const. So basically most of the time, at least for this first 2 weeks, you're gonna be using mostly var and let because const isn't gonna be as used as much. So just a heads up there. But yeah, these are basically the 3 ways to define variables. So var, let, and const. And let and const are ES6. So someone asked, so in JS, do developers update variables instead of deleting them? It depends on the use case. deleting variables isn't something that like people do in JavaScript as much as they do in Python, in my experience. But yeah, usually updating variables is a very common pattern in JavaScript, if that makes sense. Okay, cool. So we've covered variables, like the very basics of how to define variables. And we've covered like the data types that you can set as variables, right? And remember, we can just change any of these to let if we want. If, you know, it's basically the same. Not exactly the same, but it's very similar. And let's go ahead and now talk about functions. So functions are a special type of variable, and functions are how we actually like run pieces of code. So let me go ahead and open up a separate section here. Functions. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're good on time. Functions are a bag of worms because I would say functions are something that we're going to be revisiting a lot during JavaScript week. And this today is not an all-encompassing like definition of functions. This is just to show like the basic uses of it. There's many ways to define a function. I guess the most recommended way is to do something like this. So you write the word function, you give it a name. So let's say we want to create a function called add. So you say function, like the special word function, the name of the function, and then you put parentheses, and then you put curly braces, and then you don't have to open them up, but it's just easier to read if you do, like press enter. And actually, maybe before we do the add function, let's just say yell. Let's create a function called yell that basically takes in a string and then console logs it, but in all uppercase, right? So for example, if we call, like just an example of usage, if we say yell, and then we put in the word like hello world like this, we should get something like this. So this is what our goal is, right? So a function, as you can see, when we actually use the function, we have to pass in, or we don't have to, but we basically write the name of the function and then parentheses. And this is called calling it, right? This is how we define a function. So let me write function defining a function. We're basically telling JavaScript like this function exists, right? And then down here in this example, that doesn't work yet because we haven't written the function, we're showing how to actually use the function or call it. So in the parentheses, this is where we write something called the arguments or the parameters, right? You're going to hear them have many different names. But basically, the parameters are the pieces of data that the function uses to do something. So in this example, our yell function needs to take in a string, or just like it needs to take in some text. So what we can do is we can give it a name, give that text a name, and you know we can call it text, we can call it string, or actually string is not good because string is a special word in JavaScript. Like generally you don't want to name your variables like true, string, like all these things that are built-in words in JavaScript. It's going to be hard to know like what's built in and what's not, but over time you'll start to get an idea. For now, let's just call it str, which is short for string. So str is like a shorthand for string. So in the function body, and what I mean by function body is everything that's in between the curly braces, we now can use str. So let's see what happens if we just say console.log str. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. So this is our function definition, right? Basically now in our JavaScript code, we have a function called yell. And to actually use yell, we can type in the function name, so yell, parentheses, and then let's actually use a variable that we defined. Let's use the variable, let's use cat name, right? Something that we have earlier in our code. So I'm actually just gonna pass in cat name here. So how we do that is we type yell, parentheses, and then cat name. And let's run this code. Let me clear our console and run it. Well, I didn't really delete my old console log, so now it's confusing. But let me go ahead and hide these. We don't actually need these anymore. let me rerun it. But basically it runs, it just prints Bobby, right? We basically didn't do anything special. We basically just put a console log inside a function. So that's not really useful, right? But the name of our function is yell. So we actually want to make it uppercase. And we're going to be introducing something called methods. So methods are, actually we're only going to be talking about built-in methods. So strings, numbers, booleans, right? All these data types that we were talking about earlier, they each have their special functions that are built into the data type itself. So for example, strings have a built-in function called toUpperCase, which, as the name implies, basically just changes a string into uppercase, right? So to use that method, we can basically, so string is a string, right? Or str is a string. On a string, we can just type dot toUpperCase, and then open and close parentheses. And this will basically take the string right here, and it will transform it into uppercase. And then this is all going to be console logged, right? So JavaScript kind of works like, it's weird because it's like it runs from top to bottom, like the code direction, but then inside functions, you can think of it as running inside out. This might not make a ton of sense right now, but this is just, I feel like a good way to maybe think about it going forward. Like when I read this code, right, if we're pretending that we're a computer reading it or the compiler reading it, we first look at the inside of the function or inside of a call. So inside the parentheses, we see that string has transformed to toUpperCase, and then all of that is going to be console logged. So to demonstrate, if I rerun this code, let me clear this and rerun it. Bobby, in all caps, right? So basically it has transformed our string into all uppercase. Okay, so that's a very basic example of functions, but functions and variables, I would say, are the two most, they're not the two most key, but they're almost the bread and butter of programming languages, right? Every programming language has functions and variables, and variables aren't too crazy, right, to understand, besides like maybe some of the const and let stuff, but functions can get kind of hairy if you like have like, something like this isn't too bad, but when we start to deal with like multiple functions inside each other, then it gets a little bit more confusing. So that's why it's good for us to like kind of take it slow and make sure we understand at a very base level how the code runs here. Okay, so this is an example of, we defined a function called yell, and then we used a built-in method. In this case, we used the built-in method toUpperCase, or like, let me write this down, string methods toUpperCase, toLowercase. There's more, but I would encourage you to look them up if you do want to see all the built-in methods. But these are just like some of the ones that are included in JavaScript. Okay, so let's do some math now. Like we've dealt with a lot of strings here. Let's end this part by talking about a little bit of math. So I want us to define a function called add, and add is going to take two parameters, and it's going to console log them added together. So let's do that together. I know we haven't talked about operators yet, but operators in math work very similar. Actually, they work basically the same as they do in programming. So if we were to write this function together, function. Oh, actually, before I do that, I mentioned that there are multiple ways to define functions, right? This is called a function declaration. It's just a fancy way to say, like, this is one way to define a function. Another way to define a function is to use like a variable definition. So this is actually a good example of using const, right? Because most variables, it's very common. Oops, I deleted my parentheses. Most variables, it's very common to overwrite them, but it's very uncommon to overwrite functions. I actually can't remember an instance where it was absolutely necessary to overwrite a function and it was good practice. So const is actually useful for one way of defining functions. So we could say const add equals, right? Remember, this looks very similar to how we define variables, but we're defining a function here. Const add equals, and then we can say function parentheses brackets, and then the function body goes here. So this is yet another way of defining functions, right? And both of these are the ES5 way, or like not ES6. There is an ES6 way, which we might talk about if we have time. So let's say we want to define our add function, right? Our add function is going to take in 2 arguments. Remember, our function yell only took 1, which is this str variable. So if we want to take 2 variables, remember the naming of the variables, the naming of these arguments doesn't actually matter, right? They can be whatever you want. We can just type in gibberish and it will work fine. But remember, like, we not only write code for the compiler or computer to understand, we write code for also humans to understand, right? That's actually what makes good code, like human readable code. That is what like, you know, senior developers or like recruiting managers actually try to look for, right? Nobody wants to read code that looks like this. Like, what does this mean? So you know, in this case, if we're just adding 2 numbers together, you know, we can just use maybe a mathematical representation. So maybe just like A and then B. And as you can see, we separate the arguments with commas, right? If we want like 3 arguments, we can put a C here. But, you know, for our add, we're just going to take in 2. And so another thing about, let's have it first console.log A plus B. So I'm going to say console.log A plus B, right? This is one way of writing the function. And let's go ahead and test this here. Let me go ahead and uncomment the yell. So if I call add, remember we call a function by writing the name of the function, putting parentheses, and then filling in the parameters, right? So there's 2 parameters here, so we have to put 2 parameters here. So, you know, here we can use like maybe the age variable. So let's say I take my age. Remember, age is equal to 26 in this instance. And maybe for our second argument, I just define it like on the fly. I don't have it as a variable. So maybe I say like 2, right? So age and 2. And remember, age is equal to 26. So let's go ahead and run this. And as you might anticipate, we get 26 plus 2, which is 28, right? This is what we see here in the output. Okay, so yeah, there's many ways to do this as well. And I want to show you something about functions before we move on, which is this function. If a function doesn't have a return statement in it, it doesn't have a value. So what I mean by that is, if I were to console.log this whole, like the output of this, like this whole function, the output of this whole function is actually undefined. Console.log doesn't actually output anything. Console.log just logs it, right? So it's useful for us human developers. But for the computer, if we want the function to actually give us something, then we have to return it. So let's swap out this console log with a return. Return A plus B. And now I'm going to save the output of add to a variable. And I'm going to show you what I mean here. So let's say we're going to, let's just say var c equals add age 2. So if we console.log c, basically we follow the chain here, right? We see that we've created a variable, we've set it equal to the output of this function call. And a function will only output something if it has a return. Return is basically a way to of a function to say, hey, this is what the function gives us. It's different from console log. I don't know if that makes too much sense right now. Console log is just a way for us to see the output as humans. The computer doesn't do anything with the console log, right? But here, the computer is actually doing something with the output of add because it's returning something. once again, functions are hard. And I know this is like might seem like a lot, but I do think it's important to just highlight that without this return, like if we change this back to console.log, all right, let me first demonstrate. So let me leave it as a return, and let me console log C. We get 28, right? We get 28 if we console log C. And now to demonstrate, let me change this back into a, let me actually just not, let me just not put a, I'm gonna not put an output at all. So I'm gonna actually just comment out this code. And now if we console log C, because there's no return in this function, it actually gives us undefined. An undefined is another data type. It is basically like a null data type. It's not exactly the same thing as null, but it basically just means that something's undefined. So if we rerun this code, see, we see undefined, right? Does that make sense? Undefined is like, maybe I'll list it here as the data type. This undefined is the third data type. So no one would ever do this, but let's say we create a variable called A, and we set it to undefined. As you can see, undefined is a special word in JavaScript as well. And without a return, functions give us undefined. So typically, not always, typically when you're writing a function, you'll pretty much want to have a return statement like that. The homework will go into this a lot more in depth, so don't worry if you feel like this function part is confusing. I know this is the hardest part of it, but there will be a lot of opportunity to practice it in the homework. Okay, cool. I think that's a good way to kind of sum up for today for JavaScript. Let's do a really quick recap. So today we really focused on a couple of things, which is comments, right? Comments, that's pretty straightforward. Oh, another way to define a comment, if you have like a multi-line comment, is you could use slash asterisk. So everything in between here will be a comment. Right? It's just, this whole block will be a comment. So if you want to write a comment that's like longer than a few blocks, you can do it like this. Otherwise, you would have to do it like this. Which is fine, right? Both of these basically do the same thing. It's just, it's just easier and it looks better to do it like this. So this is how you do a multi-line comment. This is a single line comment. This is a multi-line comment. Cool. So that's comments. We talked about console logs, right? Console logs don't actually do anything in the code. Like the computer doesn't understand. Oh yeah, let me increase the font size a bit. Is that good? I can make it a little bigger. Maybe there's a setting. But yeah, so console logs, they don't actually do anything for the computer, right? The compiler doesn't understand it. It's just for us humans to see what's going on. So it's useful for logging, basically. We covered variables, and we covered that there's 3 ways to define variables. var. So I'm going to put an example here. Var is the classic way. There's let, and both var and let you can overwrite, right? As you can see here, I defined a variable here, and to overwrite it, I just say the variable name and then the new value. I don't need to say let again. And then we have const, which is for variables that can't be changed. Most notably is you would use const for functions because you almost would never overwrite functions. And then we covered a couple of the data types, right? We covered strings, which are basically just text, and we can use single quotes or double quotes. I'll make a note of that. Single or double quotes. We covered numbers, which they're numbers. You can add them together, you can subtract them, you can multiply them, all that. And we covered booleans a little bit. Booleans are basically just things that are true and false. We'll be getting a lot more into this in part 2 on Thursday. We talked a bit about undefined. Basically, undefined is just like no value. And then we talked about the basics of functions. So we talked about the basics of defining of functions. So there's 2 ways, right? We can write the word function, the name of the function, and then the parameters. Or we can define it like this, which is using const, var, or let, basically defining it kind of like we define a variable, right? The name of the function equals function, right? And then we do the same thing here. I would say, in general, I would recommend this way. If you're going to get used to a style of writing functions, I would get used to writing functions this way. Because let me show you something weird. Let me go ahead and show you what happens if I move this call, right? I'm calling the cat name. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to call this yell function above the definition, right? Remember, I said JavaScript runs top-bottom, right? So theoretically, this shouldn't work, right? Because, you know, JavaScript is going to be like, it hits the yell function. It should be like, oh, yell doesn't exist yet. It should give us error. But let's watch what happens here. Oh, I already actually declared the A variable, so I need to actually rename it to something else. All right, let me rerun that. Whoa, it actually worked, right? There was no error. Super weird. There's some witchcraft going on here, and that's actually why I recommend using it this way. Basically, the short answer of what's happening is that when you define a function like this, like when you use the word function first, you define a function this way, it hoists it, which is a fancy term, but basically what's actually happening is that when I run this JavaScript file, JavaScript looks for all the functions that are defined like this. It looks for all these function declarations that look like this, and it actually lifts them to the top of the page, which is also called hoisting. So actually, when it gets time to hit the yell line, like in line 51, it actually already has this defined, because ahead of time it actually lifted all these functions to the top. Super weird, right? It sounds like crazy, but basically that for that reason alone, even though these are basically, they do the same thing of defining functions, I recommend this style generally, because it just makes it safe, right? You won't run into errors. You're less likely to run into errors where like a function is not defined with this style as opposed to this style. Okay, so someone asked, I returned that we must use const when defining functions. When do we use var or let? Yeah, so I would say basically just use var or let for anything else, right? If you're defining a string, like these examples here, if you're using a number, just like this, if you're defining the number here, that's when you use var or let. And one other thing about var or let, like maybe a question is like, which one do you use? Again, I'm gonna say the same thing as I said for the single or double quotes debate, right? In that it doesn't actually matter which one you can use. It's just style, right? It's just like consistency. If your code base, if you're gonna use var, just use var all the way, right? There's almost no reason to mix var and let. They kind of do the same thing. If you do, if you're working an existing code base and they're using let, you know, just keep using let, right? Don't use var. So it's one of those things like it doesn't matter, but it kind of does if you want to like have your code look like professional, basically. So we'll get into, there are actually some differences between let and var, but it's going to be very difficult to explain before getting into scope and all that. But hopefully that makes sense. Basically use let and var for everything else. Use const for functions for now. We'll be using const a lot more when we get to React, but that's quite some time away. Okay, really quick to wrap up functions here. So this is another way of defining functions, right? And these are all ES5 ways. I'm also just going to show the ES6 way of doing this as well. So this is the ES5 way, so I'm going to comment this out. ES6 way, arrow functions. So ES6 introduced a lot of changes, right? And basically also introduced a different way to write functions. So if we were to rewrite this add function in the ES6 way, this is what it would look like. Const add equals parentheses, arrow, brackets, return a plus b. So I would say this is recommended. Like I like this style for writing functions, like with the word function. I would say this is called a function definition. And this is not ES6, right? Or not recommended. I don't like this style as much because I think the ES6 way is like a lot better. for reasons that we won't get into today, because once again, it's opening a bag of worms, can of worms, sorry. But basically, if you were to rewrite this function on line 58 to 60 into the ES6 way, it would kind of look like this. You know what I mean? And it's nice because it's a shorter way, right? I basically just had to type less, or I guess I forgot the arguments. But it's basically, I just type less to get the same result. So, you know, not much to say else here besides that this is just an alternate way. And this is the, if you do see functions look like this is the ES6 way. So once again, same thing about consistency, right? If you see a code base that's using this style, even though I say it's not recommended, if you're working with that code base, be consistent, right? Don't be that person that goes off and tries to use the most modern thing, because it's actually better to have it be consistent with the old, the way it's been presented. Okay, so I think that about covers it. There's a lot, of course, there's a lot more to JavaScript that comes about, but I think this will actually give us a strong foundation for the homework. Yes, so someone says data structures, algorithms are foundations, then object-oriented programming design. Yes, I agree. I think you know, after we get into the JavaScript basic stuffs, as soon as we can start doing some basic LeetCode questions and basic algorithm questions, I actually think that helps a lot, not just for job placement, but also helps your understanding of JavaScript a lot. So I think we'll get into those a little bit more next week. But yeah, that's a really good call out there. Okay, cool. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. Hopefully it was also okay that I showed the ES6 way and the ES5 way. This is just so, you know, when you see these in the wild, you'll see that, oh, like this arrow function, so it's using the ES6 style. That's like all I want you to get out of that. Like you don't have to memorize any of this for now. But yeah, cool. I'm gonna hop back into slides. I'm also gonna copy and paste this code in the Discord, just in case you want to run through it. But yeah, I think the homework is actually probably a better use of time if you do want to play around with it. Okay. Okay, so I think actually the best way to learn the basics of JavaScript, especially if you're just starting out, this is a really great interactive app. It's completely free. So you don't have to log in or anything, which is nice. And it's a lot more condensed than Code Academy, so I actually prefer this. It's called Learn Programming, and it's basically an interactive course for teaching you the basics of JavaScript programming. As you can see, a lot of what they talk about is stuff we covered today. It just gives a better, like, you know, it's a lot more in depth, so that's great. And I want you to stop. Well, I mean, you kind of have to stop unless you pay, because apparently after chapter 10, they charge. So I want you to basically stop after part 9, which will set you up really well for Thursday. So here's the link to the homework, and yeah, it should be fairly straightforward, especially if you're following along today. A lot of it should be pretty familiar. Tomorrow's exploration for arrow functions. Yeah, I think arrow functions are, it's just like in JavaScript, functions are they get kind of crazy once you start introducing like scope, closure, hoisting, like, you know, these are the hard parts of JavaScript. We will get to them definitely, but it's good to like ease into it. And yeah, just JavaScript, arrow functions kind of border on having to explain those. But anyways, pretty straightforward homework. Basically, it's just like a bunch of interactive exercises. Should be fairly quick. But once again, do let us know in the homework channel if you're having issue. Additional resources. So I know I said I don't like books for web development because they become outdated a lot. I was really just thinking of physical books. There's actually a lot of good ebooks out there for web development, and I would say the best ebook for JavaScript right now is this one called Just JavaScript. It does cost money, but if you do want, like, it maybe not great to buy right now, but like if you do, you know, get more serious and become a web developer, knowing JavaScript with just really deep will go a long way. And I think this is one of the best books for it. So it's justjavascript.com. And yeah, this is the one I linked. Actually, this is the more advanced one, just Learn JavaScript Online. We'll get into this one later. And Code Economy also has a pretty good JavaScript course if you do want to like go super in depth. Cool. All right. So with that all said, I think that's basically it for today. Yeah, feel free to I know less people have been filling out the feedback form, since I'm sure a lot of the feedback was more relevant in the beginning, but if you do want to fill that out, you can just use the feedback command. I think that's updated. Do let me know if it's not updated. And then I'm gonna go ahead and go through the chat and revisit some questions that I missed. Oh yeah, so I'm gonna cover, I'm gonna cover Mido's question, who he probably isn't here right now because it's super late for him. But basically, his question was like, when he discovered Webflow, right? And if you're not familiar with Webflow, let's go ahead and pull up their website. Webflow is like WordPress, if you are familiar with WordPress. Like Webflow and WordPress and Squarespace, Wix, right? You've probably heard some of those names before. These are website builder platforms, right? They're like no-code tools. And basically, I think the question here from Mido was, why bother learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript if you can just build an amazing looking website in Webflow, right? Which is a very valid question, right? Many would, like, I think when platforms like Webflow first came out, like front-end web developers were like, oh my God, like, you know, it's scary, right? They're, now anybody, you don't have to even have to know how to code to build a website, right? So like, why learn how to code? I would say, yes, Webflow has definitely, like, Webflow and WordPress and Squarespace have definitely made basic HTML, CSS skills less valuable. That being said, that's why JavaScript is the focus here, because JavaScript, there's just so many things you can't do in Webflow that you can only do with JavaScript, or having to write your own JavaScript integrations. For example, in Webflow, if you want to have, like, I don't know, maybe not login's a good example because they do have plugins for login, but if you want like a custom like slider or custom calculator, you're going to need to know JavaScript, right? There's no code way to add that interactivity or that functionality without having to, you know, induce a ton of pain onto yourself. So yeah, Webflow and all these other tools, like I personally like Webflow and Framer, right? I use Framer for my website. Like this site that right here, you know, it's a very quick landing page, right? This I did not code. You know, I used Framer to do it because it's so fast. But as you can see, there's like no functionality here. It's just a basic web landing page, like a basic wait list. So for sites like that, where it's just like you just need design and no functionality, yeah, I would say Webflow and Framer and all those other sites are great. But you know, for us, we're learning the skills so we can build real apps, like more complicated applications. And you just can't do that as easily without coding, honestly. I know there are platforms like Bubble. So Bubble is actually like, it allows you to build apps without code. So as you can see, you know, they're building like an Uber clone here, and they have like this logic flow that you can do. But in my opinion, learning Bubble is also a pain. It's almost as hard to learn Bubble as it is to learn like JavaScript. So and Bubble's not as flexible as learning JavaScript, right? So it's like you almost might as well learn JavaScript. I'm sure this will change at some point if Bubble or like other platforms become easier. But in my opinion, with HTML, CSS, just those two, yes, there's not much advantage over, say, hiring you if you just know HTML, CSS versus hiring like a Webflow designer. But if you know JavaScript, that is the real differentiator. So that's what that's why we emphasize JavaScript a lot here. Because that is kind of like the main skill for web development. Yes, static and dynamic board. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's basically like Webflow and Framer are great for static sites, right? This is a static site. There's nothing going on here. It's just static content. But if you have like a dynamic site, like, I don't know, Instagram.com or Facebook.com, like something like that, you know, it's very, very difficult to do that without coding. Typeform link is closed. Oh no. Let me go ahead and check that. Sorry about that. Hey, no, can you take her away? All right, let me pull up the Typeform. Sorry about that. What I say, let's see, I need to share. Go ahead and share that. Free. Wait, I can only get 10 responses? Oh my God. I have to upgrade. I have to pay for Webflow if I want to get more than 10 responses. When did they change that? I could have sworn. Oh my God. Okay, well, all right, I'm upgrading right now, but that's, I didn't know that. Whoopsies. Sorry about that. Give me one quick second. Dang. So while I'm upgrading my plan, sorry about that. Let me go ahead and get this question about. So let me scroll up really quick. Okay, I see a question here about, is free code camp enough to learn JS? Yes, free code camp is a good way to learn JavaScript. I just find their projects and like technologies sometimes are a little outdated, but overall it's a good resource. I would say free code camp's pretty good, and yeah, they do a good job at teaching JavaScript. Is JavaScript similar to Java? No. Yeah, that's a really, it's actually funny. If you read the history of JavaScript, Brandon Ike, right, he is the creator of JavaScript. He was like, Java's a popular language. I want to create a new language. How can I ride the coattails of Java and make my language popular? I know, I'll just add the word script after Java, which he thought was a brilliant idea. But it was actually a terrible idea because now, like, I mean, everyone, when they start, thinks that Java and JavaScript are like the same or similar, but they're totally different. So I blame Brandon Ike for that. Yeah, nice marketing. Yeah, I mean, I guess the marketing worked, but like, come on. He probably had no idea it was going to be like this successful. Wait, actually I have to turn off my mouse pose because it's sharing my credit card information. Oopsies. He supposedly wrote JavaScript in like a weekend or like a week. Like he wrote it really quickly, which you know, JavaScript haters would be like, oh, that totally makes sense. Sorry, I'm still upgrading my Typeform account, so give me a second there. All right. Sorry, so a question about, would you generally say JavaScript is the most valuable in the language? Valuable language? Yeah, that's kind of a difficult thing to say. It's the most popular language on the market right now. But valuable implies that like the pay level, right, is higher. I would not say that JavaScript is the most high paying language on the market right now. I think that position has to go to either like Rust or like you know, like a really, basically people pay the most for languages that not a lot of people have and are things that are hard to learn. So Rust is one of those. I don't know, like I know people pay a lot for like C developers, like assembly, like stuff like that. So I wouldn't say for pay wise, Solidity. Yeah, Solidity is another example, right? For blockchain, like that's pretty in demand as well. But not a lot of people know Solidity or Rust these days, so that's why they are pretty high paying. But JavaScript, I still think it is the most popular language hiring wise, but it's not necessarily the most highest paying. Okay, cool. So the Typeform should work again. Let me go ahead and like double check that. Sorry about that. I had no idea that there's a limit to 10 responses. SMH Typeform. Yeah, I probably should use Airtable. Whoopsies. Typeform looks nicer though. All right. Let's see. Are there any questions I missed? Cool. Oh, someone did say they want to learn JavaScript to make games on the web. Sorry, I must have missed that question. Yeah, honestly, JavaScript is like, you can make great games on the web, and a really like one of the good frameworks for doing that is Phaser. So yeah, Phaser is it's a game framework. So it allows you to create like, you know, very good 2D games, as you can see from the examples. If you want 3D games, then you're gonna have to look at like 3JS, which is not really a game framework, but it's a 3D framework. So for example, I don't know. Let's see, actually, let me look up the 3JS React examples, because those are really nice looking. Like 3JS is like a pretty high skill curve, and honestly, we're probably not gonna get too deep into it. I do have a really highly recommended course for it, but like if you want to create like crazy sites like this, like what is this? This is like a Prism. like that uses 3 assets, then yeah, 3GS is the way to go. What's another good example? Yeah, see, like pretty cool textures, right? But yeah, it's pretty complex. It just requires a little bit more. You basically have to dedicate a good amount of time to studying 3JS. But there's this amazing course that I always recommend. 3GS Journey. It does cost money, but I think it's by far the best course for 3JS. And yeah, this one I've done before. I highly recommend it. What content do JavaScript coders usually make? Like, what is JavaScript usually used for? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, JavaScript can be used for making like, as we can see in these examples, like if you want to create really immersive, interactive experiences, like look at this, like this is all JavaScript, right? This is like a virtual gym, and this is all made in JavaScript, which is pretty insane. Hey, stop! My cat's stepping on my mouse. So JavaScript can be used to create like really immersive experiences like this. You can make mobile apps. You can make web applications. Like if we go to like, I don't know, Instagram, I don't think I'm logged in, but like Instagram.com or like, I don't know, pitch.com, right? Like this slideshow app. All of these apps, like anytime you want to make a web application, you can use JavaScript. Oh yeah, Discord's a great example. Discord uses JavaScript on their, I don't know if they use React Native. I don't actually know. But basically, Discord, I know that Discord uses JavaScript for their desktop app and their web app, right? Which is actually very convenient because they don't need to hire like a separate set of desktop developers. They can just use the same JavaScript developers to build the web app and the desktop app, which is kind of cool. How do they keep it so performant? I mean, I don't know. They definitely have some like, they definitely don't have it all in JavaScript. They probably have some like Rust or C wrappers, but I mean, yeah, they have a really impressive like setup for Electron. We need football matches like this. Yeah, that'd be super cool. Or like all sports matches like in viewing like 3D like this would be pretty sick. But yeah, as you can see, it's really smooth. Like it's pretty insane that this is JavaScript. Like I can spin around pretty fast. You can change like the scaling of things. I don't know this. Whoa, cool. Yeah, pretty neat. Any luck with Tailwind UI? No update yet. They haven't been responding to me. Honestly, I need to keep bothering them. But yeah, still haven't gotten an update there. I think that it sounds like they're willing to do a discount at most. I'm trying to see if I can get like free licenses, but I think maybe because we're not an official like educational institution, they're like reluctant. But I will keep bothering them to let you know. Oh, Discord is React Native. I didn't know that. Okay, so that's cool. So not only is the web app for Discord and the desktop app for Discord in JavaScript, but their mobile apps apparently are in React Native as well. That's really cool to know, actually. Then same advantage, right? They don't need to hire like a lot of mobile developers that are specialized in Swift or Java. They only need those JavaScript developers. Spotify is another one that their mobile app is in JavaScript. Instagram is another one that their mobile app is in JavaScript. So let's see. Making a website to learn web dev. I noticed the site shows for a quick second before loading the integrator script. Yeah, that's that. I don't know if I can debug that just like right off that description, but I mean that has happened to me in my sites as well. I mean, are you using like Next.js or React? Like that might help me understand it, but honestly, I probably won't be able to debug it unless you send me like a GitHub or just like, the full code where I can kind of like look at what's happening. But generally, like my hunch, like from my experience of this happening before, it's like basically your code is like it's loading the site first, and then it hits the logic where it's deciding whether or not to show the loading indicator. So you get that flash of content first. Okay, cool. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, feel free to send it. I can take a look. But in my experience, it's generally something to do with that, like the flow of like the script is being loaded first, and then for some reason it shows the site before loading the indicator. Like one way to maybe control this, I mean, this is not going to work for all frameworks or all technologies, but you could basically have it so like if the site hasn't loaded yet, instead of just showing the site by default, you purposely show nothing. Like somehow you hide the output, so you kind of mask it and then show the loading indicator and then show the site. I don't know if that will work, but so to sum up JS, it makes things more dynamic. Yeah, dynamic, interactive, right? It without JavaScript, you wouldn't be able to make, without JavaScript or like PHP or something like that, you wouldn't be able to make a site dynamic or interactive, because yeah, HTML, CSS just can't really do that. Whee! Yeah, I need to figure out like the Tailwind UI stuff. I wonder if I should keep bothering them or keep begging them until they give us it for free. But I mean, worst case scenario, we get like discounts, which is, I guess, is fine. It's just still a lot of money, but honestly, it's incredibly worth it. Like if you do, if you do commit to using Tailwind, like not only do you get all these like components, which are amazing, you literally use these every single day. You also get a bunch of templates that are really nice. Like you could pay for them individually, but if you get the license, you get all of it. So you get a really nice like personal site template, a really nice like marketing site. Yeah, it's just like they give you nice templates. So for example, if you're going to make a membership-based website, you would need to use JavaScript. Yes, I would say yes. Like, what we talked about with Webflow, there are like no-code plugins, right? I'm using no-code to describe like Webflow, Squarespace, like Wix, all those cool tools are like no-code, right? Because you're building things without code. In those, if you're using those platforms, you can add membership without JavaScript. But if you're building your own website or app from scratch, then yes, I would say you would use JavaScript for like membership, like account logins, etc. And right now, another thing to know is like we're talking about client-side JavaScript. So let's see if I have this still linked to that Figma. One second. Figma. Okay, so yeah, let me pull up this Figma. I don't know if you guys still remember this, but this was something we went through on the very first session. Remember this? So this is go away. I guess I'm not logged in, but so ignore that. Basically, right now for JavaScript, we're just learning front-end JavaScript. And to do things like log in and sign up, like you need to interact with the database, which a lot of that comes with the backend. So there's a front end component to JavaScript, which is what we're kind of learning and what we covered today, like the bits. But we're also going to be talking about the backend version of JavaScript, which more specifically is like known as Node.js, and like the Node.js ecosystem. That's later. Like after we talk about React, then we're going to start, like React is our final part of the front end part. And then we're going to go into the backend part. And we'll only learn how to build your own like authentication thing. We can only do that once we do the backend part, essentially. But there are a lot of tools that handle it for us so that you don't necessarily need to know backend. But if we want to build our own, then yes, you do need to kind of get into the backend section. So Jackie asks... Oh, Jackie asked about Tailwind UI. So Tailwind UI, it's not a distributed npm package. Like basically, if you pay for it and have an account, they just give you access to their code snippets. So it's not an npm package.
So you just copy and paste it?
You just copy and paste. Yeah, you basically just copy and paste. They just unlock the sections that you can't copy and paste if you don't pay. I mean. Okay, so any recommendations for learning web design principles? I'm not a designer, so I might not be the best person to like speak on this, but from my experience, if you want like a really, there's sites down. Oh wait, that was weird. If you want a really straightforward book that's like written for developers, like it's written for developers, and it talks about like learning the basics of design from a web developer perspective. I think this is one of the best like books for that. Coincidentally, it's written by the same people that made Tailwind. Adam Wathan, I don't know his last name. Adam Wathan and Steve Shoger. They created Tailwind, and they created Tailwind UI, and they also wrote this book. And yeah, it's just a really good like. Here, I'll share it in the chat. But this is probably like if you just want one guide for like learning the basics of like web design and principles from the point of a web developer, I think this book is amazing. Besides that, like there are a lot of courses and boot camps that you can go through, just like how, you know, there's a boot camp for web development. But you know, if you just want to care about like getting better, but you don't want to become like a product designer, I highly recommend this book. Yeah. Yeah, basically they tell you like, you know, why does this version look better than this? And it kind of like breaks down like all the things that go into that. So someone asked, for data scientists, I need to know math, Python, statistics. Yes, basically if you were to get the title of a data scientist, I would say mainly just Python statistics. You really want to know decently well. I say that, but like I am not good at math, which is funny because I worked as a data scientist. But as anybody that knows me knows that math is not my like strong suit. So it's funny that I ended up in this career position. So I would say like really the main thing is like, yeah, statistics is by far the most important math for a data scientist. It's more, and just like programming, it's like the skill comes from applying it, right? So you don't have to memorize like, I don't know, you don't have to be able to recite Bayes' theorem or like all these statistical probability stuff like off the bat. You just kind of need to know how they're applied. You might have to know it for interviews though. And for data scientists, I would say like if you haven't visited this site already, this is the best site for becoming like a data scientist or learning how to become a data scientist, Kaggle, right? And what I like about Kaggle was first they have a bunch of free courses that take you through, you know, intro to programming with Python, like all the Python packages you need to know for data scientists, like Pandas, NumPy, Matplotlib, and all that. They talk about SQL, they talk about deep learning, time series, computer vision. You know, it covers like all the most popular like subjects for data science, and these are all free. So I think it's a really great way to learn that. So that's one reason why Kaggle is amazing. The second reason why Kaggle is amazing is because of their competitions. So on Kaggle, companies will partner with Kaggle to host data science competitions. For example, here's a competition that the NFL is hosting, right? See, the NFL is going to pay like the winners of this data science competition $100,000, and it's whoever can predict the best. Like, okay, so in this competition, they want you to create a model that evaluates linemen on pass plays. I don't really follow football anymore, so I don't really know what that means. But basically, these are, even if you're a beginner, you know, obviously as beginners, it's going to be difficult to win something like this, but you can see everyone else's submission and you can see their code. So basically you can see how the top data scientists like approach problems like these, and a lot of them just share the models that they use. A lot of them share like the breakdown of like why they did certain things. It's just super helpful to look at, and I like that all of these are like rooted in real business problems. So yeah, highly recommend Kaggle. It's probably the best site for data science, learning data scientists. Only statistics I know are mean, medium, and mode. Thanks for this. Yeah, that's same here. I mean, yeah, that's you definitely have to use statistics like knowledge if you work day to day as a data scientist. But you know, I would always say it's like more about applying. If you can apply it really well, I would say that's a little bit more valuable than just like having to memorize all these concepts. But honestly, my statistics need some brushing up. I've been using generative AI. Like, you don't need to use that much stuff, like that much math. So I feel like I've lost it, lost a lot of my statistics knowledge. But you know, I wasn't really great at statistics to begin with. DataCamp is good too. Yeah, DataCamp is good. I would say DataCamp is good as like a course. Like if you just want an overall course, like it's very similar to like the Kaggle courses. But if you want like real world, if you want to start building up your portfolio, definitely Kaggle is like where to go, because you can just enter these competitions, even if you don't win, right? You just say that, hey, I entered this competition, you know, and you share your link to the code, and it just looks impressive, right? Yeah, they always have like beginner competitions, they have advanced competitions, etc. Pretty great site. I wish someone made something like this for web development, where there's like competitions. But I guess web development's a lot more contested, so that'd probably be harder. All right, I'm probably going to start winding down. Need to get some more water. But yeah, like I'm happy to take any other last minute questions if there are any. But hopefully that was a good session. We got through a lot of information. Hopefully it wasn't overwhelming. I think that homework should hopefully tie it all together. But yeah, for sure, it's JavaScript week JavaScript is definitely the main like skill I want us to take away. So definitely want to know how we're doing there. Oh yeah, if you want to play around with these 3D examples like that gym I was looking at, like do check out this site. These are all made with React and 3JS. So when we get to React, you'll be able to like kind of make your own or play around with them more. But yeah, there's some like pretty crazy demos here. Why don't you make it? That I don't. For startups, I don't mess with marketplace type business because they're really difficult. Building a marketplace seems somewhat easy, but it's insanely hard. It's one of the hardest types of startups you can make, and that's kind of what Kaggle is, right? It needs to be a marketplace to connect data scientists with the companies, and I'm scared of building a marketplace. Woo! Let me share this link to the. What is the type form for? Oh, so we might have missed this at the beginning, but we're gonna launch a second course in January that focuses on generative AI. So I think it's actually gonna be the first generative AI course maybe ever. I don't know if there is another one. Do let me know if you've seen one before. But we're gonna cover generative AI text, generative AI like images, maybe some video as well. But it's basically designed for developers. So y'all are kind of one of the target audience. After the web development bootcamp, it could be a good way to like, if you are curious about breaking into AI ML, or you want to make your like profile stand out, then yeah, feel free to sign up for the type form. The type form basically just keeps you updated about like when more information about the details comes out. But yeah, we'll build things like an AI writing app, an AI art generator, maybe like a Chrome extension for summarization, chatbots. You'll learn like advanced prompt engineering techniques and more. And another thing I'm really excited about with this course is that I used to work at Copy AI, right, which was one of the first generative AI startups. And one of the things we saw at Copy AI was like, it's really hard to hire people that know generative AI because there really aren't many. Like it's so new that there's only like a handful of people in the world that like knows this stuff. So I'm going to partner with like companies like Copy AI and other generative AI companies to match them with like the students that are going through this course, because this is a very new field, and just by taking this course and like building projects in the space, you immediately become like the top 1% in the world of people that know this stuff, just because it's so new, right? So it'll be a good opportunity to get like matched with potential companies that you're interested in that are in the AI space. And yeah, I'm pretty excited here. Hey, how's it going? We just wrapped up our boot camp for today, but yes, if you want to hang out and join, you're welcome to. We basically, we run a 12-week coding boot camp here. Currently on like week 4-ish, something like that. We're talking about JavaScript. We're going to be doing like all of front end. So after JavaScript, we're going to do Svelte, React, then we're going to do Node, Next.js, all that good stuff. But yeah, welcome. Oh, nice. Oh, perfect. Yeah. If you want to hang around, feel free to. You can also we also have a Discord if you want to check it out, and if you do want to see like the whole curriculum, feel free to check out the Notion as well. I do actually have to update the Notion, so I need to update the Notion, my YouTube, and my Twitch videos, which is a lot, but yeah, I do have to do it. Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention it's free. Yeah, it's free. No one. There's no pay needed. What do you do or how it's going? What do I do professionally? I used to work as a AI engineer, where like I've been in software engineering for like 8-ish years, but I switched to like data science, like AI, like a couple years ago. So I used to work at Copy AI, as an AI engineer and software engineer. And then I actually quit like 2 months ago. So now this is what I do. I run this boot camp. And yeah, it's going pretty good. I hope, like, you know, we have a good class of people joining us here. We have homework so that people can like practice what they've learned. But yeah, you know, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh, nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, feel free to join us here. Yeah, definitely check out the Discord if you want, because that's where we keep things posted, like office hours and lessons and all that. Yeah, definitely. The focus of this bootcamp is to it's targeted for complete beginners, and yeah, it's to kind of take them to getting hired. Cool, for sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, y'all. I think I'm about to wind down for today. Good session. Oh, that's the last question. Did you already started lessons? Yeah, so this is session 7, I think. Yeah, so we just started out session 7. If you want to watch old recordings, you can see them on Twitch, like on my Twitch VODs. The Twitch VODs are going to be more recent. If you want to watch the old ones, yeah, you can check out YouTube. Just feel free to use that !YouTube command, and it will give you the link to my YouTube, where I think the first 3 sessions are uploaded there. Honestly, I'm kind of behind on the YouTube recordings, but if you want to watch the first ones on YouTube, and any ones that are missing on YouTube, you can watch on Twitch. But eventually, I'm going to catch up and upload the ones on YouTube. For sure. Have a great day, y'all, or have a great night if you're in the Eastern or time zone. All right, thanks so much, y'all. Yeah, appreciate it. Hopefully, you had a good session, and I will see y'all on Thursday. Oh yeah, feel free to tell people about the generative AI bootcamp too, because I'm trying to open it up to like other people as well. But yeah, really, it's designed for people to have some web dev background. They don't have to be senior level or anything. Just some web dev background would definitely help. Oh, you're welcome, Kathleen. Hope you learned something. All right, catch y'all later. Bye. Oh wait, I always forget my camera's here.